I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
Hello and welcome to Mad About Superheroes, Reign of the Supermen. I think it's safe to say that everyone has some sort of connection to Superman. Since his debut in Action Comics #1 during the late 1930s, Superman has become a pop culture multimedia phenomenon. Over the decades since his Action Comics debut, there have been many actors to portray the Man of Steel on the small and big screen. The role of Clark Kent Superman has become a most coveted star-making role. Currently, the last son of Krypton is being played by David Cornsweet in the soon-to-be-released Superman. Though it remains to be seen how Cornsweet will perform in the dual role, we have over a dozen actors that have brought Superman to life in animation, in live-action television, and in so many movies. Everyone has their personal favorite. There are no wrong choices. I'm going to share my personal favorite portrayals of Superman, and I hope you'll let me know in the comment section below who's your favorite Superman. By the mid to late 80s, I began collecting comic books heavily. Though I sporadically picked up Superman comics, I wasn't all in until John Byrne's Man of Steel limited series, which was a post-crisis event and rebooted Superman in the comic books. I loved getting in on the ground floor of a modern take on the last son of Krypton. Writer-artist John Byrne's legendary runs on Captain America, the Uncanny X-Men, and the Fantastic Four made his takeover of DC Comics' flagship comic book very exciting, not only in concept, but in execution as well. For me, it was the first time that the Superman comic felt like the Christopher Reeve Superman, and I loved every minute of it. If I had to pick a favorite part in the 6-issue limited series, it would have to be number 3, which is a reimagining of Superman and Batman's first encounter with each other. Superman attempts to bring the Gotham City vigilante to justice, but the Dark Knight manipulates the Man of Steel into aiding him in the apprehension of the villainous Magpie. In the end, Superman realizes that though their methods are different, they are ultimately on the same side. Though many of us were introduced to Superman through the many DC comics, most were introduced to the Man of Steel through more mainstream media. My introduction to Superman began with Superman the movie and the Super Friends cartoon series. Or maybe it was vice versa. I can't definitively remember which came first. Danny Dark as the voice of Superman on Super Friends is ingrained in my brain from my childhood.
Superman! Pardon my rude entry, but there's little time. Let's go.
Dark voiced Superman for over a decade, the entire run of the Super Friends series. My favorite incarnations of the Super Friends are Challenge of the Super Friends and Galactic Guardians Superpowers Team. The Super Friends is wholesome, kid-friendly, campy Saturday morning entertainment that I have a very fond childhood attachment to, especially Danny Dark's earnest portrayal of the Man of Steel. I was thrilled on Christmas morning of 1985 when I ripped open a present and saw a Superpowers Superman action figure inside. It was one of my favorite childhood toys. For a lot of us, the Super Friends cartoon was a gateway into the DC Comics pantheon of superheroes. And now, without further ado, Number 5, Brandon Routh. Superman Returns was not the return I hoped for. Though Brandon Routh gives a pretty good performance, I believe he would have done even better, but unfortunately Superman Returns' a lackluster script lets him down. Though a sequel to Superman Returns was planned, it never materialized. However, Routh got the opportunity to play the Man of Steel yet again on the Crisis crossover on the CW DC universe. And from what I've seen of his performance, I'm glad he got a second chance.
It's actually one of the least insane things I've ever heard. First, stay and face Luthor.
Number 4, Tyler Hoechlin. Superman and Lois is a series I watched the first 2 seasons of. I did like him on the Supergirl series, which Superman and Lois is a spin-off of, and Hoechlin's performance is just as strong as it was on Supergirl. But I just couldn't get into this series. For the same reason I couldn't get into Smallville. All the teenage drama. If I wanted to watch a teenage melodrama, I'd rewatch Dawson's Creek. Number 3. Dean Cain. Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman was a series I watched and enjoyed as a romantic drama first and a Superman series second, which I think was the show's intention, so I guess it works. The chemistry between Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain is what makes the series work and what people tuned in for week after week. The soap opera will they or won't they get together vibe was a tried and true formula on primetime TV. It worked for Sam and Diane on Cheers, and it worked for David and Maddie on Moonlighting. Why wouldn't it work for Lois and Clark? Number 2. Henry Cavill. After the disappointment of Superman Returns in 2006, we'd have to wait almost 10 years for another big screen interpretation of Superman. Man of Steel opened in theaters to mixed reviews. Whether it was worth the wait or not is up for debate. Love it or hate it, I don't think anyone will cite Henry Cavill's performance as a reason for any of the negative criticism of the film. I think Cavill fits the part extremely well. As in the case of Brendan Routh, script issues prevented him from playing the more optimistic version of the character Superman usually is in the DC Comics. And to Cavill's credit, he certainly is the most physically formidable looking Superman there ever was. Honorable mention: Gerard Christopher, Superboy. Technically, Christopher played Superboy, not Superman. But who are we kidding? He's a grown man. The Superboy series lasted 5 seasons. Gerard Christopher played the Boy of Steel for 4 of the 5 seasons. The first season had John Newton as Clark Kent Superman, but behind-the-scenes issues resulted in Newton being recast, and Christopher stepped into the role. Though Newton has his fans, I prefer Christopher in the role. Gerard Christopher also actually auditioned for Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, but lost the role to Dean Cain. Before we get to the number 1 spot, I wanted to say that I don't count Tom Welling on Smallville. Although I think Welling would have made a good Superman, in the entire 10 seasons of Smallville, no cape, no tights, he never actually became Superman. And I don't count the last few seconds of the final episode on the series finale. Though there have been many different versions of Superman on the printed page, in animation, and in live action, I'll always prefer a Superman more in line with the late 80s, early 90s DC Comics. Hopeful and optimistic. The Big Blue Boy Scout. Though it remains to be seen, James Gunn's Superman seems to have a bright tone and seems as if it will embrace its more comic book roots. My initial thoughts from seeing the trailers is that it seems overbloated with too many characters, and I'm not too crazy about Superman's costume. Nitpicks aside, I hope David Cornsweet does an excellent job as the newest actor to portray Superman on the big screen.
Look! Up in the sky! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Number 1. Christopher Reeve. Starting at a very young age, Superman the movie had a lasting effect on me. I can't remember exactly when I first saw it, but I almost never missed it when it aired on network television. In the 80s, Superman 2 was my favorite because of its action-packed cinematic battle between Superman, Zod, Nan, and Ursa. Nowadays, epic superhero battles destroying cities is par for the course in comic book movies, but back then it had never been done before. As I got older, I grew to appreciate Superman the movie more and more, because it perfectly captures the optimism of the title character. Superman the movie has immense respect for the source material. Though I still extremely enjoy Superman 2, Superman the movie is my absolute favorite in the original series. Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Clark Kent and Superman is a major reason for my enthusiasm for those films. Even the weaker entries in the franchise, Superman 3 and Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, which are almost universally critically panned films, Christopher Reeve's performance is consistently great throughout. To many, including myself, Christopher Reeve is the definitive Superman. Superman was already a shining star since the late 1930s, and other actors had played the part. Reeve brought something completely fresh to the role, especially the duality of the character. Right down to his posture. His bumbling, mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent persona is visibly transformative into the confident, heroic figure of Superman. To his credit, Christopher Reeve refused to wear a muscle suit and worked out vigorously to get into superhero shape before filming began. One of the essential components to Superman's character is his humanity. Though he's an alien from Krypton, he was born and raised by human parents in Smallville, Kansas. He has these incredible powers, but what really makes him Superman is his humanity, and Christopher Reeve embodies that aspect of the character like no one before or after.
Who are you?
A friend. Bye.
I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for letting your geek flags fly with Mad About Superheroes. And please, don't forget to let me know in the comments section, who's your favorite Superman?